My name is Beverley Bass, and I was an American Airlines captain on a Boeing 777 on 9/11. And we were actually flying from Paris to Dallas when the attacks happened. We were over the middle of the North Atlantic, and we got word on our aircraft radios that one of the towers had been hit in New York. And of course, at that time, like even some of the newscasters, we just thought it was a light airplane. And of course, later it continued to get worse. And we were notified that they were going to close all of the airspace, not only New York, but all of the US airspace. So we knew that we were going to divert somewhere. We assumed it would be one of the larger cities in Canada, Montreal, Toronto, Calgary, someplace like that. And then we eventually were able to talk to Gander Control, which is who you first come in contact with as you exit the North Atlantic tracks en route to the US. They told us to land our airplane immediately in Gander, Newfoundland, which we did. We were 36 out of 38 wide bodies to touch down that day in roughly a 3.5-hour time frame. Gander had a population back then of 9,400 people, and we were just a little less than 7,000 passengers and crew that showed up unannounced to this tiny community. And we stayed for 5 days. And as airline pilots, we are all very familiar with Gander, Halifax, St. John's. They're all emergency cities that we divert to if we have any problems with the aircraft or passengers that have to be removed due to medical issues. So we know about those towns, if you will, but most airline captains will retire having never landed in any of them because our airplanes are so reliable today, and it's very seldom that you go in with a mechanical. I had the unusual experience of actually landing in Gander 3 times. I was there for 9/11, and then I flew for 7 more years after 9/11, and I had 2 medical emergencies. So I've been to Gander 3 times. I don't know any other airline captain who can say that. Well, we always refer to it as a 9/12 story. And as you can only imagine, so many people are very apprehensive about saying anything that has any significance to that day and 9/11 itself. So really, the story is about the people of Gander. It is about how they came together, how they took care of all of us. And it was unexpected. It's not like they had weeks or months to plan for this. We landed about 10:15 in the morning on 9/11. We got off the airplane at about 7:30 the next morning. And I think this was my first realization that we had landed in a very unique place. When we walked into the terminal that morning, after having been on the airplane for 28 hours, the small airport was just lined with tables with all kinds of food. I mean, hot food, cold food, desserts, fruit, and they gave you a plastic bag and you just went around and you put in your bag whatever you wanted. It was my first indication that the entire town and surrounding communities had literally been up all night because that's the only way they could have had the food at the airport at 7:30 in the morning. And that went on throughout the day until all of the airplanes everyone was deplaned and they were taken to wherever they were going to be staying. They're very unique people, I must say. They are very isolated. They're hardworking. They live in the frozen tundra that most of us cannot even imagine. And what's so amazing about them is their whole life is built around family and helping other people. Like they would never go outside and just plow their driveway. They would plow the whole block. And then in the winter, when it's just so miserably cold for us, they go to each other's homes and they have what is called kitchen parties. And they sing and they dance and they eat. Everybody plays like 5 instruments and they sing all these wonderful songs. And so much of that has been incorporated into the musical. And the writers would actually tell you, because, they're Canadian, and they said it would be impossible to write a musical about Newfoundlanders without incorporating their music, because it's in their DNA. It's just who they are. And they honestly, if you ask them about their story and 9/11, they don't think they did anything. They don't think they did anything out of the ordinary. And I have often wondered if we dropped 7,000 people in 38 wide-body airplanes into some small community in the US, would they have done the same thing? I would like to say yes, but I don't know. I really don't know. When we went back to Gander for the 10th anniversary, which is when we met David and Irene, and we had done a lot of interviews, mostly 5-second sound bites for the evening news. But I was told that there were 2 playwrights in town and they wanted to know if they could do an interview. And I said, sure. And it lasted about 3 to 4 hours. And then we went back to Texas. I mean, it was the 10th anniversary. We spent 4 or 5 days there and we came home. And I really never thought that much about the interview again. Maybe during the next 4 years, David and Irene would email me with, a benign question to clarify something that I'd said in the interview. And then in the summer of 2015, we got a call from the producers inviting us to the world premiere opening of Come From Away in La Jolla, California. And my husband and I didn't even know what we were going to see. I didn't know how prominent my role was in the show. I had absolutely no idea that they had written a song called Me in the Sky that chronicles my aviation career. So imagine sitting in the audience front and center, and you're watching this happen on stage, and you didn't even know it was going to happen. So it was overwhelming. When the actress at the very beginning of the show rolls out her chair and picks up the phone and says, "Hello, Tom." Well, my husband just buried his head in his hands. I'm not even sure he saw the rest of the show, because what it made me realize is that day was much more difficult for my family. My kids were 8 and 10-ish, and they didn't know where I was. They just knew I was flying. And I wasn't able to actually talk to them till about 4:30 that afternoon. So it was a hard day for them. Our schools were on lockdown. My husband left his job, picked them up at 10 in the morning. That never happens, believe me. He doesn't pick the kids up at 10 in the morning for no reason. And they knew the airplanes had been hijacked, so they were terrified. I was okay. I knew where I was, and that was fine. So to see that all play out on stage the first time is very daunting, because you can't imagine seeing yourself up there played by an actress.
Broadway's must-see musical takes you into the heart of the remarkable true story of 7,000 stranded passengers and a small town in Newfoundland that welcomed them. Come From Away.
It is so authentic. It's just mind-boggling. They literally interviewed thousands of people. They had so many stories. I want to say that their first script was like 8 hours long, and they hadn't even gotten into the main part of the show. So the stories were just endless. The show is 100 minutes long. It does not have an intermission. And the reason it doesn't have an intermission is because the writers felt like none of us got a break during those 5 days. So there was really no good place to put an intermission. So Yes, it is so authentic. Certainly, my role is spot on. There might be one or two little mundane things, like it says I was 51, I was really 49, but I mean, that's insignificant. It just kind of rhymed better with the music, I guess. And I think most of those of us who are portrayed in the show would certainly say the same thing. We are very honored and feel so great about the way they portrayed us. I feel like people should understand what the community did for us while we were there. And even though 9/11 goes down as the most tragic day in American history, there were good things that came out of it. And the stories that came out of Gander are just incredible. And I remember getting on the airplane after we'd been there 5 days and we're flying home. And I said to my co-pilots, I said, I just want the whole world to know about Gander. And how are we ever going to tell this story? And David Hine and Irene Sankoff made that happen. It was just so beautifully done, and it just made me feel so good.